Well, Bill, we're at a little different setting right here. We're at the edge of a clearing at an old oil well or gas well site.
Yes.
And earlier when we were talking, I understand that one of the challenges that you face on this property is how do you manage these things called reserve pits? Why don't you tell us what those are and what your challenges are here?
For one thing, on this property, we have about 10 or 12 active gas well sites. Most of these gas well sites are about 350 foot by 350 foot. They are built that large so that we can put the drilling rig in here, drill the well, but after the drilling rig leaves, there's an area approximately 100 foot wide and 200 or 300 foot long that needs to be reclaimed. And what we've tried to do in the past few years is to look at the soil types that are on each one of these reserve pits. And the reserve pit is this back part of the property that we're seeing now. The plans are, based on the soil type we have here, is to put some hardwood trees in this spring. We've looked at several species of hardwood, and we're leaning toward several species of oak trees, such as the bur oak and the chestnut oak, as well as some white oak species. And this February, couple months, or next month, we plan to do our planting. This year we've gone through here and bush hogged it and took some soil samples and saw that it would be great for hardwood. If we look at the edge of the property here, we see that back to the west here is an area that's predominantly hardwoods. These are primarily some red oak species with some intermittent pine, and this is part of a wildlife corridor that we have established on the property. Throughout the place we have a lot of pine production, but we still try to, I guess, establish enough hardwood areas where the wildlife will have something as far as mass to provide during certain times of the year. And so these wildlife corridors are important for me to establish and to maintain. And by planting some hardwoods here, we'll just be able to extend a little bit, maybe a couple acres, the hardwood varieties that are present on this part of the property.
That's great. So this is one challenge you face. Have you faced any others, any institutional challenges?
That's one thing that we see often is that, you know, the taxation on land varies depending on your use of the land. There are agricultural exemptions that are very beneficial to the property owner from a tax structure standpoint, and these open spaces, these pasture lands, have a more favorable tax benefit than forested land. And there are some things that you can do to improve your tax structure for timbered land, but as a rule, I think we're seeing that there's a big challenge facing all the landowners that have timber property and trying to keep their tax level low or at least comparable to the pasture land and open spaces. And so that's something that you need to work with your local organizations, but we're seeing that there's some special things that can be done to help improve that tax structure.
Well, I'm sure that that's one of those problems that'll never go away, and we'll always have the opportunity to work on it.
Oh, I think you're right about that.
Okay. Well, we need to see some more of your place. You've got a lot of interesting features. Let's go take a look at some more.
Okay, that'd be great.
Well, Bill, if I were to guess where we're standing right now, this would be the Emerald Highway.
Oh, you're right. We're practically in the middle of the Emerald Highway. This is a pipeline right away that's probably about 120 foot wide and stretches for about 1.2 miles on the property. Generally, we go in here and plant cereal grains such as Elvin rye, wheat, and oats, and then scatter some additional things as clover and some peas and things like that. And we see that this is a great place for the deer to utilize the food plot, but it also gives them some variety as far as the food. We're actually in the middle of one of our wildlife corridors also, which is made up predominantly of some red oak species, some hickories, and some other hardwoods as well. And this little area here is an area that we try to hunt extensively. It allows us to watch the deer as they actually come out on the pipeline. It gives us plenty of time to usually judge what kind of buck or what kind of doe there is, and that way we seldom make many harvesting mistakes as far as taking the wrong deer. So this actually, from a hunting standpoint, is great, but also from the wildlife standpoint, it provides them a year-round food source. Early on when we bought the property, there was access to the northern end of this pipeline, and so right after we bought it, we constructed what we call a privacy fence. It's made of corrugated sheet metal, and actually does two things. It prevents people from driving down the pipeline, but more importantly, it prevents them from actually shooting deer down the pipeline. And from a safety standpoint, that's very important to us as well.
Especially if you're in the stand when they decide to do that.
Yes, and that's happened before. And so since then, since we put up the privacy fence, it's really prevented anybody from actually looking down the pipeline and actually seeing what's going on back down here.
Well, this is a beautiful spot, and it's not bad to have this bright sunny day and the blue skies we've got today to see the green in this, this strip.
That's right, and we try to fertilize, and about every 3 to 5 years we'll actually lime the property too, and along these pipelines. And even though the pipelines are detrimental to timber production, we try to utilize the land in every opportunity we can, whether it's for the wildlife management, whether it's to, put ground cover to prevent erosion. There's always something to do, and because of that, it's an ongoing project.
Well, it looks really good, and I'm sure the deer are waiting for us to get out of here so they can come back out and start feeding. So why don't we go look at another spot?
I think we will.
All right, thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Well, we're in a completely different kind of setting here. This is a recent clear cut done just this last year.
Yes.
And when you look at a place that has been harvested, everybody knows in good forest management you always look at regeneration. So what are your plans on this site, both of you, and what sort of future, I think this is a good place to ask, what sort of future do you see for tree farming here in East Texas?
Well, definitely that we're going to replant probably this summer. Of course, as you can tell, there's going to have to be some work done, some dozer work and everything, but there is a demand for timber, and that's why, that we're doing the harvesting and replanting to help with the demand.
So you think you can sell trees in the future if you got them, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's what our plans are.
All right. Well, good, and I hope your plans succeed.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, Bill, did you want to add anything, or either of you, about detail about the future? What do you see? What are your prospects?
Well, I realize here in Texas that most of the private landowners, every time they harvest a tract of timber, probably only 1 in 7 acres is actually replanted. And being good stewards of the land, I see that, it's a responsibility for us as landowners to maybe go beyond that curve and try to replant every acre that we harvest back into timber. And I see, like Jill said, in the future there's going to be a big demand for timber, and especially Texas grown timber, because we see a lot of areas in the Pacific Northwest where the timber industry has been shut down due to endangered species and other environmental concerns. And I think it's up to the private landowners to try to pick up that slack and try to provide a wide basis for timber and for timberland in the near future. And so from that standpoint, I think the future is very, very bright for the Texas tree farmer.
So if you own land, you have options.
Oh, I agree. I think you have options, but I think you also have responsibility too. As landowners, we should be thankful for the land that we own, but we should also try to improve the land, both from a timber standpoint, from a recreational standpoint, from an aesthetic standpoint. I think all this goes hand in hand, because you can do one and neglect the others, but in a well-managed timberland, I think if you include a little of every aspect, you'll have a property that's worth a whole lot more in the end, both both from a personal standpoint and